So if you're trying to repair a relationship, a lot of people can worry that trying to win back your ex or repair a relationship with someone who dumped you or who is unsure, there can be this worry that you are kind of being a simp, that you are being pathetic and you have no self-respect. The truth is, it's never about whether you try to rebuild, it's about how you do it. So in today's video, I want to break down how to repair your relationship whilst keeping your self-respect intact. So the very first step is to avoid emotional chasing. So when you're trying to repair a relationship, the exact moment that you lose your self-respect isn't when you decide that you still want your ex. It's when you let fear dictate how you pursue them. So the most common mistake people make after being broken up with, or their partner asking for some space, or even just a pause while they're figuring out their feelings, a lot of people enter a state of panic. And this leads to a lot of begging, a lot of bargaining, a lot of over-explaining their worth, trying to sell themselves. What this does is this actually signals to your ex or your partner that you value them far more than you value yourself. And this can damage any remaining attraction. So it's important during this time to make sure that you're implementing a no chasing rule. So what does this mean? This means that you're not jumping into sales mode. You're not trying to explain to your partner about how high value you are, how they should be in the relationship with you. You're not using logic to try to persuade them to come back. It's actually the opposite. It's actually holding back on doing all of this salesman talking. When you communicate, you have to communicate in a very high value way. Now, I've done videos on this, which I'll link to up above and in the description down below, but making sure that during this time, you're not falling into chasing mode. So you're minimizing the emotional conversations whilst doing the work that actually has the impact on the relationship. The reason for this is that self-respect when repairing a relationship is not defined by a lack of desire. It's defined by your standard of treatment. So when you stop chasing and bombarding them with emotional conversations that you're not ready to have, this interrupts the pattern and this breaks the script that they expect you to follow in their mind. The next step is to make sure that you're shifting the power dynamic. So don't get me wrong, this is not about power over your partner, but this is changing away from the old relationship to the new relationship. So a foundational mistake that a lot of people make is trying to crawl back into the same relationship that failed. Now, this is one of the biggest hits, if you think about it, in terms of self-respect. Trying to go back into the old version of the relationship is a simp's move. It does impact your dignity and your self-respect because you're basically saying, I know that the last relationship was bad, you know it's bad, but I would still rather have that than be alone. If you think about it, if someone is wanting out of the relationship, if someone has broken up with you or is needing some space, that old relationship is dead and buried. So choosing to chase that old relationship and accept a lower tier status just to be in a relationship, you're kind of setting up a very low standard for the future of that relationship. And this is where it does impact your self-respect because you're essentially choosing a relationship that doesn't work, that your partner doesn't want, rather than being alone. And this is why focusing on what a new version of the relationship would look like, a relationship that does have very high standards, and then it becomes a lot easier to know how to lead the relationship in the right direction. So you have to reset the dynamic. So this means treating your partner or your ex-partner as almost like a new prospect, making sure that you change the standards in which you show up in order to cultivate a new version of the relationship. This is so important because you can't build a healthy relationship on a foundation that's rotting. By choosing to show up differently and choosing to show up in a way that is impactful in the relationship, you kind of force a new playing field for both of you. This helps you and your sort of subconscious mind that the old version of you no longer exists, but it also signals to your partner that the old version of the relationship is also something that no longer exists. And now you can both start seeing it as a potential new relationship with a new version of you and therefore a new dynamic. And in order to do this whilst retaining your self-respect, it's important to start practicing relational leadership. So it's completely delusional to demand a high standard relationship when you operate at a very low standard. The most common mistake here is weaponizing high standards as a kind of defense mechanism. So a lot of people will kind of demand high standards. So yes, they broke up with me, but they need to treat me better. They need to do this. They focus on the partner without operating at those exact high standards that they're demanding. And this is where we can become a hypocrite, right? We're trying to repair a relationship and we're not communicating, not managing our emotions, not doing things to a very high standard. Then it means that we're kind of asking more from them than we're willing to do ourselves. And that's not leadership. Oftentimes people set this high standard for their partner, and then when their partner doesn't meet it, they walk away out of spite or ego or hidden resentment. But when they actually look at the standard they were asking for versus the standard that they were actually operating at, it can be quite a wide gap. So if your behavior is still anxious or manipulative or controlling, or you raise your voice, or your communication is to a low standard, you can't expect someone to treat you like a prize. So in order to retain your self-respect while trying to repair a relationship, before you even think about walking away from it because there isn't a high standard, you have to first become the blueprint of that relationship that you're looking for. And this can take a lot of work. This is about living and breathing a very high standard in communication and emotions and understanding how relationship dynamics work. Once you start to understand what a high standard looks like, it's only after that that you can then even start to think about, are these standards now being upheld? So asking yourself during this time, how has my communication been? How has my passive aggressiveness been? How is my emotional stability? The reason why this is so important is that this removes any shadow of a doubt and it eliminates any future regret. When you lead by example and you are able to show to a very high standard what a high value dynamic looks like, you end up allowing your partner to see what a high value and high standard relationship looks like, and then it becomes their choice. It becomes their choice whether they want to enter that or not. And this means that you're still not in chasing mode. You're actually in the mode where you're showing up, you're choosing to show up because it's how you operate now. And then it's allowing them to make that choice as to whether they want to join this dynamic or not. This allows you to keep your self-respect while still fighting for a high standard relationship dynamic. A lot of people don't know kind of how to do this, don't know what metrics to measure as to what a high standard relationship even looks like. This is what I talk about in my bootcamp, which is understanding the 3 core environments in order to start changing that environment for both of you, to change it to a very high standard. If you want to start that journey and potentially even work with me, then join my bootcamp. This is where you'll learn the exact fundamental steps that all my members start with to start repairing, turning their relationships around from the ground up. All you have to do is click on the link in the description if you want to grab your spot. It's important to establish a walk-away threshold. A lot of people walk away from relationships way too early. A lot of people who have relationships that are incredibly repairable, that have the potential to be extremely high standard, and people walk away without making the changes that actually have an impact on the dynamic. So understanding what the walk-away threshold is for you when repairing a relationship. So here, walking away prematurely out of ego or anxiety is just as damaging as staying too long as a backup plan. So true self-respect requires understanding the dual nature of who you are. So you have your fixed self, which is your non-negotiable core values, and then you have your flexible self. This is your willingness to adapt, to change, to grow, and to find a win-win for you and your partner to build a relationship together. This is how to create a win-win for you and your partner to fulfill those values, that fixed self, with your partner. So instead of an impulsive knee-jerk exit over temporary mixed signals, people who operate to a very high value standard set a much higher threshold. So true self-respect means giving the relationship 6-12 months of active high-level cultivation before even considering making a permanent decision. So here, if you're trying to repair a long-term relationship, 10-year marriage, 5-year marriage, whatever it is, commit to a 12-month period of radical, intentional construction. So developing your skills and your adaptability, your flexible self, cultivating these win-wins. So this allows you to live by your values, but being able to be flexible in how those values are met. And it's the same for your partner as well. This allows you to negotiate between you over time, cultivate that environment for you to start creating that relationship. So during this time, focusing entirely on cultivating the 3 core environments like we spoke about, the emotional environment, the logical environment, and the synergistic environment. Once you start to cultivate those three environments to a very high standard, what my most successful members have found is that they actually see the relationship dynamic change over time, and their partner starts to feel the pull of the relationship again. They see the new version of the relationship appearing in front of them. And this is really, really important. This takes very high value communication, like we spoke about. I've actually done a deeper dive video, which I'll link to on the screen and in the description down below. But most people, when trying to repair a relationship, don't understand what it means to negotiate a relationship emotionally. Being able to cultivate wins for you and your partner is going to be one of the most crucial skills that you can learn. Anyway, so I won't dig into it here. I'll leave you with that deeper dive video, and I'll see you over there.